Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're going to once again build on Labour's first King's Speech and dig into the UK's ambitions for an energy transition. The government has placed energy security and the rapid move away from fossil fuels high on its agenda for this Parliament, underlining its pre-election manifesto pledges to do just that. This set out the route towards energy independence, stretching towards a clean energy future by 2030 with Great British Energy, its newly launched publicly owned energy company, driving investment into onshore wind, solar power and offshore wind. It's certainly an ambitious plan. Some might say over-ambitious. However, offshore wind sits at the heart of delivering this ambition as the most expensive but arguably the least community disruptive source. Current plans set out by the last government aim for an additional 50 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity in the UK by 2030, a tripling of 28 gigawatts installed at the moment. They're big numbers indeed, which makes the UK ports network critical to accessing this huge resource, providing the shipping capacity, the skills and the expertise, and of course the infrastructure required to bring the power back to land and of course to get the kit out to locations. It's a huge challenge and a huge opportunity for the port sector, which by the way, is also simultaneously at the heart of the UK's efforts to drive growth and smooth the flow of post-Brexit trade and exports into and out of mainland Europe. Investing to improve this infrastructure is clearly going to be critical, so let's hear more. My guest today is Francis Paonessa, Capital Projects and Engineering Director at Associated British Ports. And with 21 ports under its management across England, Scotland and Wales, ABP is the UK's largest port operator and as such is deeply involved in smoothing that flow of UK freight, but also in providing that critical infrastructure and expertise that will become the backbone for the UK's plans for energy transition. So, Francis, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Hi, Anthony. It's great to be here.
Well, Francis, I attempted to set the scene in terms of the port sector's role in delivering the government's many ambitions for trade, but also for driving energy transition. You joined ABP in April this year, following previous capital projects delivery roles in water and industrial and transport sectors. So before we get into ABP's specific role, how critical would you say that the port sector's role is set to become?
Well, I think ports are an essential part of the UK's strategic supply chain, with 95% of all trade entering or leaving the country doing so via a port. At ABP, we handle around a quarter of all of the UK's seaborne trade, and together with our customers, our ports contribute more than 15 billion to the UK economy and support over 200,000 jobs. And we're also a really significant driver in promoting investment and employment in coastal regions, many of which face serious challenges.
Okay, I said you've got 21 ports. They're all around the country. I presume it's in the 4 months you've been at ABP, you've been travelling quite a lot.
I have. I was really lucky in the first 6 weeks. I managed to get around 17 of our ports, which is quite a trek. And it's amazing how different they all are. You tend to think, if you think of ports at all, that ports are port. But the economic model, the business model there, our customers, all so different. I found it really fascinating. And of course, my particular focus is on the many ports where we've got some big projects going on.
Yeah. Well, I highlighted the critical role you've got in helping the UK to build its energy transition ambitions. But there are other many critical issues that ports now face in terms of improving efficiency to boost productivity and ease the flow of goods. How do you prioritise those challenges that you face?
Yeah, I think there's two parts really. I think at high level, we really are a bellwether for the UK economy and for global trade. So our fates are closely linked at that high level, that strategic level. I think also, and this is a good piece, UK port sector remains highly competitive, and that provides a lot of choice and value for UK businesses and consumers, whilst really actively engaging with the wider world. And for us, to increase our market share, we've had to work hard to drive internal efficiency. But we also work to build strong partnerships with customers and local communities. And we have to work really closely with the national governments to ensure they can provide the pieces of the puzzle that we can't. Namely the supportive infrastructure such as road, rail, electricity network or human resources such as skills.
Yeah, because that really drives to one of the really key issues and perhaps constraints facing ports and the development of ports is the multitude of partners and stakeholders that you impact. The roads, as you say, and the rail networks that connect you, the local communities you work alongside and provide your employment. The environmental agencies, the shipping and freight operators you serve, and the supply chains you support. How do you maintain those partnerships? Because they are all, really, really important, but they're all, in many cases, they're also actually quite opposed to each other.
Yeah, I think it's not so different to other sectors. Clearly, I think it's important that we engage in regular dialogue with those multiple stakeholders and, as I say, supplies. Pretty much in most of the businesses that I've been in. I think in particular, though, for ports, we attach really big importance to consulting local interests about proposals for development. Increasingly now, our ports are developing master plans to explain actually what we're doing today and to set out the main options for development for the future. And that local engagement, that's taking into consideration the local views, really is important to us.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into your previous roles a bit later on, but since joining the port sector, do you think that the role of ports is given sufficient prominence compared to, say, water, railway, or the highway sector in terms of its role in driving the economy and delivering those better outcomes for the public? The reality, you don't hear an awful lot about ports in the news, in the parliamentary agenda.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The short answer is no. I don't think there is a lot of focus on ports. Most people don't really think about the port sector. Why would you? When they work well, they're just invisible. Few people have heard of Associated British Ports, and that's us as the largest ports operator in the UK. So I think, with so much of the trade entering or leaving the country via a port, it means it touches every single part of our daily life. And as I mentioned before, that role of the port sector in delivering better outcomes, especially in those coastal communities, is critical. So I think the more that we can do to raise the profile of ports and the key role that they play to the UK economy, all to the good.
Well, certainly people notice when their Amazon deliveries don't turn up or they are delayed because of various bits of disruption. But having joined ABP in April, certainly you will have noticed that there's a huge drive towards really boosting the UK's transition away from fossil fuels and the move towards renewables. How do you see the firm's role in helping to drive that transition and helping the government to meet its bold ambitions for an energy transition?
Well, I really think we're at the heart of that energy transition. We ourselves are going through a strategic transformation, really from being just a provider of gateways for the transits of goods to being a major provider and an enabler of green energy infrastructure, whether that's wind, both onshore and offshore, hydrogen and carbon capture. We sit at the heart of that UK 2050 net zero ambition. And, I can give a couple of examples of things already in operation. So, the ABP Greenport Hull hosts the Siemens Gamesa wind turbine manufacturing and assembly plant. Our port in Grimsby is Europe's largest hub for the operation and maintenance of offshore wind farms, and we're investing in Lowestoft to provide a very similar capability. Looking to the future, we've also got really well-developed plans to invest in emerging energy technologies, which will be essential to meet the UK net zero commitments. And a couple of examples there. We've got plans to invest £500 million to develop infrastructure in future Port Talbot to enable the port to host manufacturing, installation and supply chain activity for that floating offshore wind sector you mentioned in your introduction. Mm-hmm. And we're also progressing the formal planning for a dual-purpose terminal designed to be the first large-scale green hydrogen production facility in the UK, able to facilitate the decarbonisation of those hard-to-abate sectors at a highly competitive unit cost. And we'll also be able to connect liquefied CO2 into the proposed Viking carbon capture and storage site.
So, Francis, you have got no shortage of ambition yourself, no shortage of challenges there. What would you say is really holding you back? What are the big red flags on your desk at the moment, and where?
Well, I think the UK's really led the way in the installation of offshore wind, but this really hasn't been accompanied by a similar growth in jobs and domestic supply chain. So although there's some notable exceptions, so I've mentioned the Siemens Gamesa blade factory at Hull, too often the supply chain investment and employment has gone to other nations. So we're determined that for the new technologies that represent the next stage in the UK's decarbonisation voyage, we want to secure those supply chains and jobs in the UK by really working to develop more green industrial hubs at the ports. And that means our ambition, it's not just to draw in individual technologies such as wind or carbon capture, but entire industries with businesses that can build efficiencies between them as part of being a port cluster. That can build economic growth, jobs in key skills in coastal areas that really need that the most.
Right. I mean, your ports are also described, and you mentioned that there as a hub for the hard to abate transportation sectors such as shipping and high emission heavy industries. I mean, how would you say that your investment can help these sectors to really accelerate the decarbonisation and really take out carbon from these heavy industries and hard to abate transport sectors?
Yeah, and I think if I split that into two parts, firstly, decarbonising shipping is a major challenge, and our role is to work with customers to understand the fuels they're prioritising and how our ports can help, frankly, to supply it. I mean, it's a really exciting area. We've seen plenty of desktop research into possible routes forward. But what we really now want to do is to support first-of-a-kind trials to take our knowledge actually to that next step. And then in terms of industrial decarbonisation, our ports, such as the Humber, are frequently located within or adjacent to industrial clusters. So when it comes to shipping in new fuels, such as ammonia to decarbonise industry, or shipping out new sorts of waste, such as captured carbon, we're a vital part of that process. And I think the challenge to getting both of these underway is to really ensure now that the policies and regulations that cover the new technologies are fit for purpose and ensure that public funding is available to support these new technologies, such as hydrogen, in the short term, and hopefully in the longer term, the objective is that public support's gradually removed as market forces take over.
Yeah, I mean the ports such as Rotterdam, I know, are already have got huge investments, and I suppose it's making sure that you're keeping up to the pace of what they're doing over there.
Absolutely.
I mean, I talked about the need to invest, and you mentioned the need to invest. What are your priorities? Is it about building new assets, or are we talking about improving and upgrading existing assets?
I mean, it's definitely both. On average, if I look at the last 5 years, we've spent nearly £200 million a year on new assets, plus enabling and maintenance capex, and also on strategic land acquisitions. I'll give you a few examples. So one of the projects I mentioned earlier is Mill Bay within the Port of Plymouth, and that signals the latest phase in a series of strategic infrastructure developments that ABP's made at Mill Bay, which will help secure the long-term future of the ferry terminal. It'll strengthen the port's freight capability, it'll increase the port's green credentials, and it'll grow the offering actually to the cruise market. So the works we're doing at the moment are reconstructing the West Wharf, and that's a critical element in that broader infrastructure enhancement initiative. And to give you a bit of a sense of scale, I mean, we're currently investing £23 million in Mill Bay. 1.3 million of that has come from seed capital funding. That's the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport. I mean, also in the last 12 months, we spent over £5 million on decarbonising our own operations. And that means that 18 of our 21 ports have renewable energy generation on site, including solar and wind. And we plan to triple that in the coming years.
Yeah, because presumably, ships are changing. They're getting bigger. They're different. And I suppose when you start to work with businesses investing in energy transition, they require different kit. Typically you think of ports, you think about containers, you think about cranes on the dockside. But I imagine that this change is requiring you to invest in different things. What's the process for finding what you need?
So, at the moment, we really make sure that we understand customers' business priorities. I mean, it's the natural thing for us to do. I mean, we want to amplify their success, champion their ambitions, but we're also looking further ahead to them. And we're starting an exciting program called the Energy Ventures Accelerator to identify and support the emerging customers of the future, that new technology that you're talking about.
Okay. I suppose given the scale of the ambition for energy and the need to invest in offshore wind, I mean, would you describe this moment, would you describe it as a golden moment for the port sector then?
I'd say not yet. But I'd like to think we know the components that we need to put in place to get there. I mean, I really think that we could see the re-emergence of a thriving UK manufacturing sector, supplying the world with green technologies and the machinery to support global decarbonisation. And from a really practical perspective, ensuring that fewer of the container ships that reach our shores actually depart empty.
Right, yeah. Any potential blockers that you can see knocking around with? What might hold you back? Is it the supply chain? Is it policy? Is it planning? Is it financing?
Well, I think it's a bit of all of that. But I think the key for me is how policy flows into practical processes and legislation to avoid bureaucracy and the lack of joined-up thinking, which just creates barriers that are simply unnecessary.
Right. Let's talk a bit about you, Francis, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what ABP is up to. Your last role was with Thames Water, where you spent 3.5 years as Capital Programmes Director, and you're also Managing Director of Infrastructure Projects at Network Rail for 5 years. What brought you to the port sector? Do you like the water? Do you like getting out to sea?
I spent a lot of my early career out on the sea building warships. But to be perfectly honest, I'd never actually considered a career in the port sector until ABB rang me up. And I just really was taken, I think, by the scale of the ambition and the opportunity. So, not just to drive UK growth in the ABP ports themselves, but really to put in place that lasting legacy of enabling infrastructure that will help the whole country transition. That's the thing that was really exciting about coming here.
Okay, well, one thing that is consistent about UK project delivery, as you'll know, is that it never goes to plan when it comes to creating the desired outcomes. Well, it doesn't very often go to plan when it comes to creating those desired outcomes. Let's be slightly more positive. I mean, what lessons do you bring from your experience of programme delivery in other sectors that will help you to avoid the mistakes when it comes to your work at ABP?
Yeah, I think we could be a little bit more positive about project delivery. Otherwise, we could offend and a lot of people. I mean, there's thousands of really successful projects that happen, and as unfortunately, it tends to be the ones that go wrong that make the press. I just looked very recently. I think Andy Mitchell and the team at Thames Tideway, working with my ex-colleagues at Thames Water, I think there's an example of a stunning piece of really critical national infrastructure that's been delivered, really successfully. And if I look at why things like that project are successful, why projects in the past are successful, for me, it's all about being really clear about what it is you're setting out to do, being clear on the assumptions and revisiting those consistently. And usually when projects are starting to go wrong, when you look back, it's that change in assumptions that are the root cause of the problem. So being clear what you want to do, having that clarity of structure and accountability, that's what gets it done. And I've been really lucky to work on some huge, very complex individual projects, but also on really broad portfolios of lots of projects happening together.
Because I see you spent some time with consultant Axel helping major transport industry and defence clients translate their strategy into the project delivery, and I suppose that's about getting those kind of ambitions and those objectives really nailed at the start. I mean, what are the lessons there?
Yeah, I think the key lesson for me is that a strategy without a plan is a vision. So we tend to use the words interchangeably, but working with Richard Axel and the team, and which I hugely enjoyed, was really all about taking that vision that people had and turning it into a concrete plan. So things that you could actually draw a box and tick to say that you've done. And that clear structure again, clear accountabilities, having a detailed plan, and then revisiting it and making sure that that you're doing what you thought you were going to do when you set out on that journey.
Yeah, but you started your career in aeronautical engineering and fluid dynamics, and first worked in shipbuilding in Portsmouth. So this is kind of a career homecoming.
Kind of is. I think the water bit is probably the joining thing, because as a shipbuilder, we actually owned our own infrastructure. We didn't really use ports. But what I'd say about the role, I think, is more than that. It's really drawn together actually all of my experiences through my career. From engineering to operations, critical asset management, that process engineering, that infrastructure delivery. More recently, it's like I've been in training for 30 years just to come and do this job.
Yeah. Well, a part of that, of course, you were involved in some massive programs, as you mentioned, and one of which was the Future Aircraft Carrier project and overseeing the revamp of the UK's military shipbuilding and maintenance facilities. What makes these kind of major projects? I mean, you mentioned getting that strategy right, but are there some other bits of detail that make the projects run well or fall apart?
Yeah, there's books written on the subject, but what I think it comes down to more than anything is actually people, and whether they're the people that work for you in your organisation, or they're people that work in your supply chain, or frankly, they're the customer at the end of the day. I think if you can recognise those individual capabilities and accountabilities, if you can put in place, most importantly, I think, structures that facilitate fast decision making and have that clarity of who's actually making the decision rather than who's involved in it. I think, all that process stuff you can put around the edges of it. But if you can really engage with people who are motivated to deliver the outcome from top to bottom of your supply chain, then I think you've got all those key ingredients for success.
Okay. You're speaking to me from the ABP London office, but you're based, I think, in Reading, which is arguably about as far away from the coast as you can get. But what do you do when you're not at work? And I imagine you're travelling around all the 21 ports quite a lot at the moment. What do you do? What gets your mind away from project delivery?
Yeah, well, my son and daughter now are 20 and 19, so they're pretty self-sufficient. But I've replaced those with 2 large German Shepherd dogs, and they're a great catalyst, for my wife and I to spend time together outdoors, which is absolutely brilliant, because rain or shine, you're out there with them. But also, I love to cook, so when I'm at home at the weekends. I take orders from the family, and I really do enjoy some complex cooking.
Oh, right. Are you a recipe man, or are you just go with the flow?
It really depends. I mean, I've got lots of staples from my Italian heritage that I can knock out and improvise as needed, but they tend to come up with the more technical stuff that they've seen on telly, and therefore it's definitely a bit of following the recipe, but using that kind of chef's intuition for stuff that you just haven't seen before.
Yeah, but presumably your heritage means that you know what a proper carbonara should be.
I do.
Gonna share it? No, let's not get into it.
Let's not. Let's stick to the infrastructure piece, and we'll be here all day.
You mentioned the Energy Ventures Accelerator, and I see that it's something you've just launched. It's a 12-month program designed to identify suitable ventures and strategic partners and cultivate new clusters of tech innovation. Why are you doing that?
Well, I think at the headline, it's all about helping startups to scale up. So, in June, we announced this industry-leading program, the Energy Ventures Accelerator, as you said, and it's really about help promising startups scale their businesses in high growth energy sectors. We're open to startups, innovators, investors tackling challenges in floating offshore wind, industrial decarbonisation, low carbon fuels, or carbon capture and storage. And it's delivered in partnership with Plug and Play, who, are the world's leading innovation platform and venture capital investor.
Okay, and it underpins your own 2 billion green growth and decarbonisation plans, which should, and you mentioned it earlier, to drive your own business towards net zero by 2040 and support your supply chains. What does £2 billion buy you when it comes to driving decarbonisation in a business like ABP?
Yeah, so the Energy Ventures Accelerator is actually separate to our core plans that you refer to. And as part of our core plan to enable that energy transition, we launched our sustainability strategy, which is called Ready for Tomorrow. And that sets out our plans to achieve net zero from our own operations by 2040 at the latest. But it also enables the large-scale energy projects that are needed to enable that energy transition. And that's really where that £2 billion is.
Okay. And it's a 12-month, the EVA is a 12-month program. So what does success look like after 12 months? Is it a range of new partners? Is it a range of new technologies? Is it, what's success look like?
Yeah, so in 12 months, we're aiming to have those right startups for us so that we can support their growth. I mean, we're offering things like strategic locations. We've got prime brownfield land. We're ready for each stage of their growth at the heart of the UK's largest industrial hubs. We've got connections to our network of customers and suppliers, access to leading energy and logistics infrastructure. We can also help them with their planning, consenting and delivery support services so they can focus on the things they do best. And we can also offer access to overseas markets and supply chains via our world-class port infrastructure. So, at the moment, we're encouraging all relevant startups to apply, and we particularly welcome applications from women and ethnic minority and other underrepresented groups. So if you're a startup and that program sounds like it might be a good fit for you, go to our website, get in touch.
Get in touch and there will be support for you. I also mentioned that the UK ports are key to boosting efficiency of the UK's trading routes, which is really kind of central to driving growth that the UK's new Labour government is really trying to achieve. I mean, what are the specific challenges that you see requiring infrastructure investment when it comes to smoothing that flow of goods?
Yeah, I mean, we've identified a range of areas ripe for investment, from Southampton to Port Talbot in Wales, up on the Humber, out in Anglia. And I think the key challenge is going to be grid infrastructure upgrades that are going to be absolutely critical to support port and industrial hub expansion over that next decade. I mean, our ports on average are looking at a 4-fold increase in grid capacity by 2030. And sites like the Port of Southampton will actually require an 8-fold increase to support the decarbonisation, particularly of the large cruise vessels, passenger transport and development of green marine fuels. I mean, we're typically connected to the electricity distribution network. So when we're considering projects, that engagement and support is absolutely key.
Yeah. I mean, clearly the creation under the last government of this series of new free ports around England and Wales, it's changed the investment dynamic to a certain extent. I mean, how do you see that change? And I mean, where do you see that whole policy of free ports going?
Well, let me just give you a little bit of background, which I think will help explain. So we're involved in 4 English free ports and 1 in Wales. So we're the leading port player in the Humber, Solent and Celtic free ports. And we're a supportive player in the Liverpool City region and Plymouth. So we don't run the free ports ourselves. They've got their own independent corporate governance bodies. But naturally, as they tend to be based around our ports, we have a significant interest in them. And if I just look at one example, I think to illustrate, the Humber free port covers sites around our 4 ports. So we've got Goole, Grimsby, Hull and Immingham. And the free port has already attracted over £1 billion of investment, largely from 3 major developments. So we've got a Finnish company called Metsä Tissue, who plan to build the UK's largest tissue paper mill. That's going to be in Goole, creating 400 jobs. At the Saltane Chemicals Park, which is part of the Hull East tax site, Pensana is investing more than £150 million in rare earth element processing. And Meld Energy plans to invest £180 million in green hydrogen production at the site as well. So the government's given each free port £25 million of seed capital funding to be awarded to businesses investing in the free ports. And that Humber Freeport Board, just by itself, has recently signed off on funding for 7 projects across both banks of the estuary. And that will support major new facilities that will accelerate decarbonisation of the Humber. And, just a couple of those, we've got projects to receive funding are the Humber Industrial Decarbonisation Centre in North East Links. That's going to be run by an industry-led partnership called Catch. And Ideal Heating's UK Technology Centre in Hull are going to be supporting the manufacturer's transition to low carbon heating solutions like heat pumps. So already, lots of engagement in Freeports and real stuff happening.
Yeah. And that's beyond, because there was some fear that it would create displacement. It would basically move the same kind of investment from one place to another place. But what you're seeing is it's actually generating new investment as well.
We certainly are seeing that.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, just a few months into your new role, we've got a new government. Are you as excited about the prospects of infrastructure being at the heart of economic growth as perhaps quite a lot of other people are in the industry? Or are you more realistic about from what you're seeing?
As ever, it's a bit of both, but the government's got off to a great start in a number of areas. I think particularly around planning and energy. So quick to scrap the effective moratorium on onshore wind, which is great. The rhetoric on planning reform has been really encouraging. And we're really hopeful that they'll follow through on this, as it will play a huge role in unlocking growth. They've also got things like the review of the National Policy Statement for Ports, which is particularly important for us. And that's very welcome. And I hope that will really support strategic market-led port development. What we're looking for is that presumption in favour of infrastructure proposals, such as our Immingham Eastern roll-off terminal. Early days, but there's a lot of promise, and I hope they really follow through on it.
So that's positive stuff from the government side. What do you need from the supply chain to help you to achieve this ambition?
So I think it's primarily around greater collaboration. We need to present a unified voice and be seen as a trusted partner for government in achieving their ambition. We will need to work together, but I think if we can present a unified voice as a supply chain that says, here's how we can help deliver the UK ambition, then that's going to be the key thing. Yeah,
certainly you're a fellow with much on his desk at the moment and much really interesting stuff. What's your advice then for any business seeing the potential opportunity in the port sector, perhaps isn't in the port sector at the moment, but is thinking getting involved in your programme? What do they need to have under their belt? What do they need to do to get involved?
I think quite simply, get in touch. Call us, come and have a meeting with the relevant team. We've got a broad range of opportunities. So whether you're an importer, exporter looking to create or expand operations through UK ports, you're a business looking to invest in new technology that needs to be close to a particular industry, or if you're a company looking for a larger logistics and distribution hub, you don't need to use the quayside. We've got a lot of land in strategic locations with key adjacent customers. For all those things, we've got teams of people across our ports who can work with you to find the right site, give you advice, and really ensure a positive working relationship going forwards.
It sounds like a very, very exciting moment for the port sector. So thanks very much, Francis. Thanks for joining me on the Infrastructure Podcast today to give us your thoughts and analysis of what's happening.
Thanks, Anthony. It's been really great to talk to you. So thank you.
Great. No, well, congratulations on the new role, and I hope you settle into it and get stuck in. But sadly, that's all we've got time for today on the podcast. But we'll have more from the Infrastructure Podcast in the pipeline and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background links to some of the issues discussed today and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share with colleagues. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Francis. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.